8, how are you and how is everybody doing? Welcome to today's literacy lesson. Today we're going to read a poem called Naming of Parts by the poet Henry Reed. All right, so remember, we're still in Writing to Inform. This is the last piece that we're going to take here. So the first thing that we took were the two autobiographies, one by Nelson Mandela and the other one by Minda Majero. Then we took in the workbook the article from a blog, Travel by Train, and today we're going to read the poem. So since it's Writing to Inform, it means that we are going to be informed about something, right? Okay, so let's get to it. Let's read the poem. A little bit of background information. A military leader is trying to teach the soldiers the parts of a rifle. Okay, so you need to know that as you are reading through. And you know what a rifle is? It's that big long gun as you can see in the picture. All right, so let's start. Okay, today we have naming of parts. Yesterday, we had daily cleaning, and tomorrow morning, we shall have what to do after firing. But today we have naming of parts. Japonica glistens like coral in all of the neighboring gardens, and today, we have naming of parts. Okay, now this was the first stanza. Stanza is the group of verses, so this poem has 5 stanzas, 1, 2, 3, 4, and the 5th one. Okay, so he started by saying what they're having today and what they had yesterday. What did they have yesterday? Daily cleaning. Cleaning of what? The rifle, right? And tomorrow morning, we shall have to do what to do after firing the rifle. But today, we have naming of parts. Japonica glistens like coral in all of the neighboring gardens. Now, what do you think Japonica is? It's a kind of flower. So all of a sudden, he was talking about the rifle and the parts of a rifle, and now he's talking about a flower. Interesting. Let's move on. This is the lower sling swivel, and this is the upper sling swivel, whose use you will see when you are given your slings. And this is the piling swivel, which in your case, you have not got. The branches hold in the gardens their silent, eloquent gestures, which in our case, we have not got. So, how many kinds of swivels do we have? We have the lower sling swivel and we have the upper sling swivel, right? Whose use you will see. When shall we see the use? When we are given our slings. And then we have the piling swivel. Now, we have a sling and a swivel. The sling is this strap, basically. Can you see it in the picture? Is the strap that you use to carry the rifle. And then you have the swivels, which we have the upper swivel and the lower swivel, which the sling is connected to, which the strap is connected to. Okay? And this is the piling swivel, which in our case you have not got. The branches hold in the gardens their silent, eloquent gestures. Do they have these gestures? Which in our case we have not got. Okay, so what are gestures? Gestures are movement. He's talking about the movements of the flowers in the gardens. Okay? Now, he did the same thing he did in the first stanza. He was talking about the rifle, and then it's like he just shifted into the surroundings. What do you think this person is feeling? Do you think he's bored? Do you think he's distracted? Do you think he's not focused? Do you think it's the military leader speaking? Or do you think it's a bored soldier speaking? Or do you think it suddenly shifts from first person to second person? Tell me what you think. I'd like to know what your interpretations are. All right. Let's move on. This is a safety catch, which is always released with an easy flick of a thumb. And please do not let me see anyone using his finger. You can do it quite easy if you have any strength in your thumb. The blossoms are fragile and motionless, never letting anyone see any of them using their finger. So we have the safety catch. So we learned how to name the parts, the daily cleaning. We're going to learn what to do after firing. We had the upper sling swivel, the lower sling swivel. Now we have the safety catch, right? Which is always, what do you think a safety catch is used for? It's used to prevent the misfiring of the rifle so you don't shoot by accident. That's why it's a safety catch. It can be released with an easy flick of a thumb. Now, he warned from something. What did he say? Please do not let me see anyone using his finger. Why? Because you can release a safety catch so easily if you have any strength in your thumb. The blossoms are fragile and motionless, never letting anyone see any of them using their finger. And this you can see is the bolt. Now, we have the safety catch, now we have the bolt. The purpose of the bolt is what? The purpose of this is to open the breech, as you see. Now, the breech is a part of the rifle where you load your ammunition, okay? We can slide it rapidly backwards and forwards. We call this easing the spring. And rapidly backwards and forwards, the early bees are assaulting and fumbling the flowers. They call it easing the spring. Now, I want you to take 30 seconds to read this stanza again to yourselves. All right, now let me read it again. And this you can see is the bolt. The purpose of this is to open the breech, as you see. We can slide it rapidly backwards and forwards, slide what? The bolt, right? What do we call this? We call this easing the spring. And rapidly backwards and forwards, the early bees are assaulting and fumbling the flowers. They call it easing the spring. So we have two easing the spring in here. The first one is in the rifle, the bolt, right? Moving it backwards and forwards. And the second one is the movement of the bees fumbling the flowers and assaulting the flowers. This is also called easing the spring. So what do you think to ease into something? If I say let's ease into the lesson, let's ease into the term, it means let's slowly, gradually start until we get familiar with it. Okay, so what do you think this season they're trying to ease into? They're trying to ease into the spring. Okay, let's move on. They call it easing the spring. It is perfectly easy if you have any strength in your thumb, like the bolt, in the breech, in the cocking piece, in the point of balance, which in our case, we have not got. They don't have the point of balance, do they? And the almond blossoms silent in all the gardens, and the bees going backwards and forwards. For today, we have naming of parts. All right, this is it for the poem. I think that is very interesting because you'd never think of a poem as writing to inform. In the page before it, it does say reading for pleasure if you turn over to page 23, okay? So it does say that information is not usually written as poetry. However, in the following pair of poems, the writer is informing us. He is giving us information. All right, so what do you think? What do you guys think? Do you think it's one person? Do you think it's two people? Do you think the soldier is bored or distracted? Honestly, none of you are wrong. All of you are correct. I personally, when we took the lesson in class, most of the students said that they think it's just a military leader speaking. I don't know, but for me, and as I've done my research, some people think it's two people. You start as a military leader, and then whenever the shift happens to the flowers, it's as if the soldier is bored and then he's just looking at the surroundings. It's almost like he's trying to look at the bright side. What do you think why are they learning about the rifle? They're in a period of war. The time when this poem was written was in World War II. So it's like he's bored. Maybe he doesn't even want to do this. Maybe he was recruited. He's distracted and he's looking around. And then he goes back and saying, Japonica glistens, but today we have naming of parts. This is the sling swivel, and this is the piling swivel. And today we have naming of parts, okay? It's like he has to get back to this reality. One of the students even made a comment on the fourth stanza when it said that the moving backwards and forwards, sometimes it's the bolt and sometimes it's the bees, okay, the movement of the bees. It's like he's almost trying to make the rifle or the situation that they're in not seem as bad as it really is. It's war, guys. What could be worse, right? So that was one of the excellent remarks that have been made. Okay, so this is it for today's lesson. Judging distances is not with us. Let's read this part here. It says, if you're writing purely to provide information, for example, giving instructions on how to use a piece of personal equipment, then it's fully appropriate that you use an objective and neutral tone. Why? This is because your readers will be concerned only with the information being given and will not be in any way interested in the person providing the information. They don't care about you. They just want to know how to do this. They just want to get that piece of information. However, if you remember the autobiographies that we've read, Okay, however, earlier in this chapter, we considered how the writers of two autobiographical extracts not only communicated important facts and information about their lives, but also expressed this information in such a way that their individual personalities, their thoughts, remember their feelings, what they loved, what they hated, were they sad, were they happy, were also conveyed to the readers. One of the key skills, one of the most important skills in informative writing is balancing, okay? Is striking the correct balance between what you are saying and how you are saying it in order to engage your readers, okay? So this was something that I wanted to point out, which is very important. Okay, we do have a writing activity, so we don't have questions here. We just answer them together. We have a writing piece. It's in the literacy workbook. I believe it's page 20. Page 20 in the literacy workbook, this writing task. So this is the one that you should do, okay? This one. A friend is interested in taking up a sport or following a hobby in which you have considerable experience. This friend has asked you for information about what needs to be considered when starting the interest. Write an advice sheet for your friend, which includes... Okay, remember when I told you before that if you were given a question of writing, it's easier for you to divide the question, to break it down into prompts of your own. Break it down, okay? So we want to see what is asked of us, what should be in the advice sheet, okay, which includes number 1, details of the equipments that will be needed. Number 2, the initial costs involved. And number 3, the organizations or clubs which your friend could join to take part in the activity, right? So now I just broke down this question into 3 parts. I know what it's about. I know it's supposed to be an advice sheet. And I know that it should include 3 things: the equipment, the costs, and the organizations or clubs. This, guys, makes your life so much easier, and it makes your planning so much easier, okay? So it's an advice sheet. What do you think an advice sheet is going to look like? Do you think it's going to look like this poem? Do you think it's going to look like the autobiography, or do you think it's going to look more like the article on travel by train? I mean, the person was telling us about do this, do that, you'll get better prices here, you get better prices there. So an advice sheet, by name or by definition, is to give you advice. You're going to write, and since it's to your friend, it's going to be a bit informal, right? And it's going to include what you think or what you believe is the best way to do this and the best way to do that. Do you think it can have bullet points? It can have bullet points. Do you think it can have subheadings? It can have subheadings, yes, because it makes the piece look more attractive and organized and easier to follow. All right, so that is it for today. Thank you very much, Year 8. If you have any question, I'm right here.